The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy published a map that will reshape the global economy for the next decade. A single image, a red circle drawn over the Strait of Hormuz with two words in Farsi, danger zone. Inside that circle, somewhere beneath the dark water where 20% of the world's oil supply passes every single day, Iran has laid sea mines. Not threatened to lay them, not warned they might lay them, they laid them. And then they published the map showing exactly where. The world's most critical energy choke point, the narrow waterway that connects the Persian Gulf to the open ocean, the route that carries 21 million barrels of oil per day to Asia, Europe and beyond, is now a minefield. Ships that try to cross through the main channel risk triggering underwater explosives that could sink a fully loaded supertanker in minutes. Iran didn't close the Strait of Hormuz with threats this time. They closed it with weapons designed to kill anything that moves through the water. And the ceasefire that was supposed to end this war 48 hours ago, it's already over. Over the next 12 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what Iran did, why the map they published is a threat to every economy on Earth, and what happens when the world's most important oil route becomes a death zone that no captain will risk entering. I'll show you the technical details of the mines themselves, how many Iran has, where they place them, and why the United States, despite having the most advanced navy in history, cannot clear them without triggering a disaster that makes the current crisis look like a warm-up. This isn't about oil prices. This is about the architecture of global trade collapsing in real time, while both sides pretend a ceasefire is holding. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why the decision Iran made on April 9th is the most dangerous move any country has made in this war, and why it's probably irreversible. Let's go back 48 hours. On April 8th, after 40 days of war that killed over 2,000 Iranians, 26 Israelis and 13 American soldiers, the United States and Iran announced a 2-week ceasefire brokered by Pakistan. President Trump posted on Truth Social that the fighting would stop. Iran's foreign ministry confirmed the agreement. Oil prices dropped from $100 a barrel to $92 in a matter of hours. Global stock markets surged. World leaders expressed relief. The Strait of Hormuz, which had been effectively closed since February 28 when the war began, would reopen. Ships would move again. The 150 tankers anchored outside the Gulf, unable to pass through because Iran had threatened to sink anything that entered, would finally deliver their cargo. But there was a problem. Israel said the ceasefire didn't include Lebanon. Within hours of the ceasefire announcement, Israeli warplanes hit Beirut with the deadliest strikes of the entire war. Over 100 targets in 10 minutes.
182 people killed, 900 wounded.
Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued a statement calling it a ceasefire violation. And then, on the night of April 8th going into April 9th, Iran did what it had been preparing to do for weeks. It didn't launch more missiles. It didn't fire more drones. It did something far more permanent. It laid sea mines across the main shipping channel of the Strait of Hormuz. And on the morning of April 9th, it published a map showing the world exactly where those mines are. The map was released by two Iranian news agencies, ISNA and Tasnim. Tasnim is believed to be directly controlled by the Revolutionary Guard, which means this wasn't a leak. This was an official announcement. The map shows the Strait of Hormuz, a waterway 55 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, connecting the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and the open ocean beyond. The red circle on the map covers the traffic separation scheme, the internationally recognized shipping lane where all commercial vessels are supposed to travel. That's the deepest, widest, safest part of the strait. It's where every oil tanker, every cargo ship, every vessel carrying liquefied natural gas has traveled for decades. And according to the map, that entire zone is now mined. The alternative route Iran is offering runs further north, close to Larak Island, which sits just off the Iranian coast. That route is narrower, shallower, and runs directly under the watch of Iranian coastal missile batteries and Revolutionary Guard patrol boats. Any ship using that route is completely exposed to Iranian surveillance and control. And Iran has made it clear, if you want to use that route, you coordinate with the IRGC Navy first. In other words, Iran isn't offering safe passage. Iran is offering conditional passage. You move when they say you can move, where they say you can move, and only if they decide to let you. That's not a reopening. That's a hostage situation. Now, let's talk about the mines themselves. Naval mines are not new technology. They were used extensively during World War I and World War II. But they remain one of the most effective naval weapons ever created for one simple reason: they don't need to be smart. They just need to be there. A modern naval mine can be triggered by pressure, magnetic signature, acoustic signature, or remote detonation. Some are designed to sink to the seabed and wait. Others float just below the surface. The most advanced versions can distinguish between different types of ships and only detonate when the right target passes overhead. A mine doesn't need to hit a ship directly to destroy it. A 500 kilograms explosive charge detonating 20 m below a supertanker's hull will crack the keel, rupture fuel tanks, and sink the vessel in minutes. According to U.S. intelligence estimates, Iran possesses between 2,000 and 6,000 naval mines. Most were produced domestically with designs based on older Russian and Chinese models. During the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, Iran used mines extensively in the Persian Gulf, hitting both Iraqi and neutral vessels. In 1988, the USS Samuel B. Roberts, an American guided missile frigate, struck an Iranian mine and nearly sank. The United States responded by launching Operation Praying Mantis, destroying multiple Iranian naval vessels and oil platforms in a single day. But the mines remained in the water for months afterward, and clearing them required an international effort involving dozens of ships from multiple navies.
RS what the mainstream media isn't telling you.
On April 9th, the first full day after the ceasefire was announced, only 4 ships with their automatic identification system trackers turned on passed through the Strait of Hormuz. 4. On a normal day, over 100 vessels transit that waterway. That's a 96% collapse in traffic. And those 4 ships? They were likely part of Iran's so-called dark fleet, tankers carrying sanctioned Iranian crude oil with their trackers turned off, moving under Iranian protection.
No Western flagged vessel, no major oil tanker, no liquefied natural gas carrier, nothing.
Because every captain with a functioning brain knows that sailing through a confirmed minefield is suicide. Insurance companies won't cover it. Crews won't sail it. Port authorities won't allow ships that take that risk to dock at their terminals afterward. The strait isn't just dangerous, it's commercially dead. Let me explain what happens when 20% of the world's oil supply stops moving. First, prices spike. Brent crude, the international benchmark, jumped from $92 per barrel to $97.46 in a single day after the mine map was published. That's a 6% increase in 24 hours. If the strait remains closed or even partially restricted for weeks, Goldman Sachs estimates oil could hit $120 per barrel. Some analysts are warning of $150 if the situation deteriorates further. Every dollar increase in oil prices translates to higher costs for gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, heating oil, plastics, fertilizers, and every product that depends on transportation. American gasoline prices, which had briefly dropped after the ceasefire was announced, are already climbing again. Asian economies, which depend on Gulf oil for 84% of the crude flowing through Hormuz, are facing potential fuel shortages within weeks. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, and Iraq have alternative pipelines that can bypass the strait. The Saudi East-West pipeline can carry about 5 million barrels per day to the Red Sea. The UAE's Abu Dhabi pipeline to Fujairah can handle another 1.5 million barrels per day. But those pipelines combined can only reroute about 6.5 million barrels per day. The strait normally carries 21 million. That leaves a gap of 14.5 million barrels per day that has nowhere to go. And even the pipeline routes aren't safe. Yemen's Houthi forces, which are aligned with Iran, have already threatened to target ships in the Red Sea. If that happens, there's no safe route for Gulf oil to reach global markets. The second-order effects are even worse. Qatar, the world's largest exporter of liquefied natural gas, ships almost all of its LNG through the Strait of Hormuz. On March 2nd, Qatar declared force majeure on its LNG contracts, meaning it legally cannot fulfill its supply obligations because of circumstances beyond its control. European natural gas prices surged 50% in 48 hours. Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, which rely on Qatari LNG for electricity generation, are now rationing power. And this is happening in April, before summer heat drives up air conditioning demand. If the strait remains closed into June and July, we're looking at rolling blackouts across Asia and potential energy rationing in Europe. President Trump posted on Truth Social that the U.S. military has the best equipment in the world for inspecting for mines, and that American forces will keep the strait open. Here's what he didn't say. Mine clearance is slow, dangerous, and requires specialized ships that the U.S. Navy doesn't have enough of. The entire U.S. fleet includes only 11 Avenger-class mine countermeasure ships. Clearing a minefield the size of the one Iran has allegedly planted in the Strait of Hormuz could take months, not days. And every ship involved in the clearance operation is exposed to Iranian anti-ship missiles, coastal artillery, and swarm attacks by Revolutionary Guard fast boats. The U.S. military can destroy Iranian mine layers. In fact, U.S. Central Command announced on April 9 that it had already destroyed 16 Iranian mine-laying vessels. But destroying the boats that lay mines doesn't remove the mines that are already in the water. And Iran has had since February 28, over 40 days, to place as many mines as it wanted. This is the part where I need you to understand the strategic trap Iran has created. Because this isn't just about closing a waterway. This is about rewriting the rules of how global trade operates and who controls it. For 70 years, the United States Navy has guaranteed freedom of navigation through the world's critical choke points, the Strait of Hormuz, the Suez Canal, the Strait of Malacca, the Panama Canal. American aircraft carriers, destroyers, and submarines have patrolled these waters, and the implicit message has been simple. If you interfere with global commerce, you face the U.S. military. That framework just collapsed. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, not with a blockade that the U.S. could break, but with mines that the U.S. cannot quickly remove. And there's nothing the American military can do about it without triggering an even bigger disaster. If the U.S. tries to force ships through the minefield, some of those ships will sink. If a fully loaded supertanker carrying 2 million barrels of crude oil hits a mine and breaks apart, the resulting oil spill will be an environmental catastrophe that makes the Exxon Valdez look minor. The insurance costs alone will make future shipping through the strait economically unviable for years. If the U.S. decides to escalate and launch a full-scale invasion of Iran to seize control of the strait by force, we're talking about a ground war in a country of 89 million people with mountainous terrain that historically has been a graveyard for invading armies. The Iraq War lasted 8 years and cost $3 trillion. A war with Iran would be exponentially more costly with no guarantee of success. And if the U.S. goes that route, China and Russia, both of which have veto power at the UN Security Council, will back Iran diplomatically and possibly materially. So, what are the options? There aren't any good ones. Option 1. Negotiate. But negotiate what? Iran's position is clear. The ceasefire must include Lebanon. Israeli strikes on Hezbollah must stop. U.S. forces must leave the region. American sanctions must be lifted. And as long as those conditions aren't met, the strait stays closed.
Option 2. Accept the new reality.
Ships that want to pass coordinate with the IRGC, pay whatever toll Iran demands, and accept that Iran now controls 20% of global oil flow. That makes Iran, not the United States, the gatekeeper of the world's energy supply.
Option 3. Wait.
Hope that the mines degrade over time, that diplomatic pressure forces Iran to clear them, that the economic pain becomes unbearable for Tehran before it becomes unbearable for the rest of the world. But time is not on anyone's side here. Every day the strait remains closed, another $2 billion in trade is lost. Every week it stays closed, another country slides into recession. Let me be very clear about where this is heading. The ceasefire announced on April 8 is not holding. Israel is still bombing Lebanon. Iran has laid mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Oil prices are rising again. The global economy, which had briefly stabilized after the ceasefire announcement, is back in crisis mode. And neither side has defined what the end of this war looks like. The United States says it wants Iran to give up its nuclear program, dismantle its ballistic missile arsenal, and stop supporting militias across the region. Iran says it wants the U.S. and Israel out of the Middle East entirely, reparations for the war damage, and full control over the Strait of Hormuz. Those positions are not compatible. There's no middle ground. There's no compromise that both sides will accept, which means this war is not ending. It's pausing. And every pause is just preparation for the next round. The mines in the Strait of Hormuz are not a temporary tactic. They are a permanent statement. Iran is telling the world, we may not have aircraft carriers, we may not have stealth bombers, we may not have a military that can match the United States in open combat, but we have geography. We sit on the shore of the world's most important oil route. And if you push us far enough, we will shut it down, and there's nothing you can do to stop us without destroying yourselves in the process. That's not a bluff. That's a fact. And on April 9th, 2026, Iran proved it. So, here's my question for you, and I want you to think about this carefully before you answer in the comments. Who actually won this war? The United States killed Iran's supreme leader. Israel destroyed Iranian military infrastructure. American forces sank dozens of Iranian naval vessels. But Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, sent oil prices to $97 per barrel, and forced the global economy into a recession that's just beginning. The U.S. spent $3.7 billion in the first 5 days of this war. Iran spent a fraction of that and achieved a result that no amount of American firepower can reverse. That's not victory. That's checkmate. Thanks for watching. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the strait will ever fully reopen? Do you think this war is really over? Let me know. And if you want to stay updated on what happens next, make sure you're subscribed, because this story is far from finished.